we now have a full weather family at the Preston Atlantic City's parent company, Lee Enterprises. You may remember John Boyer. We interviewed him a few years ago. He was my weather brother in Richmond. Well, since then, we've actually added 2 new meteorologists, bringing us to a total of 4. Now, John is no longer with us here. He took another job, but we have someone from Virginia that will be coming on in for December. But for this episode of Something in the Air podcast, I'm going to introduce you to Kirsten Lang from the Tulsa World Herald. She just started, and Matt Hollander, who's going to be covering the Midwest for Lee Enterprises. Both of them have strong backgrounds in media, and what they're going to be doing kind of similar to what you're seeing here. But I want to peel back the onion and show you more about how they're going to tackle weather in this increasingly digital space. And we're also going to talk about their childhood growing up, as well as what made them want to become a meteorologist. So kick back wherever you are, relax, hang out for the next half hour. You're listening to the Something in the Air podcast. All right, so I am here with one of my weather siblings here. We've had John Boyer on, who was at the Richmond Times-Dispatch a couple years ago. He's actually no longer with Lee Enterprises, who owns Preston Atlantic City, but we have someone here who's very special, Kirsten Lang. She is our meteorologist for the Tulsa World Herald. Kirsten, thanks for being here. And, my first question to you is, why choose a company like where you're at, the Tulsa World Herald? It's a historically newspaper company, but obviously doing a lot with digital.
Yeah, doing a lot with digital, which, is really where things are going a lot these days anyway. So I have a background in television news, and I've been working in TV for over a decade as a meteorologist all across the country. And, especially in the past, let's call it 5 to 7 years, there's been a huge digital push. And most of my work, of course, was on TV, but most of it too was behind the scenes doing things digitally. And so I, stepped out of that role for a little while. I am actually a new mom. I have 2 children, kind of took Thank you very much. It took, just about a year or so to kind of reevaluate things. And this job popped up with the Tulsa World. And I knew I wanted to get back into something. I'm not a very good, my husband and I joke, I'm not a very good stay-at-home mom. And I needed to do something other than watch Curious George. So I saw this job open up, and I was really intrigued with it because, again, it's a lot of it is going digitally, and this was something where I could use my meteorological background, my expertise that I have, but use it kind of in a different way. So it's kind of twofold. We get to do it on a digital front, whatever it is that you're getting, your updates on, whether it be your iPad or your phone, your laptop, whatever it is, there's that base. And then also, it's print. And so there's some writing involved, which is kind of cool. I have a writing background. Anyways, I have a minor in journalism, and it was one of those things where I could kind of dive a little bit more into the science behind certain things. And on TV, you don't usually get a lot of time to do that sometimes. And so this role really was going to allow for me to kind of get into the science behind certain phenomenons and things that take place. I mean, there's been many times where I've had friends call me up, or even my doctor called me up one time because he wanted to know why are we getting all this ice and we're not seeing any snow. And so I kind of had to, walk them through it. But I think people are interested. They want to know more about science. They want to know more about the weather. It impacts everybody every day. And so this role is something that's going to allow for me to kind of broaden my horizons when it comes to being a meteorologist.
And I know that the company loves you, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when I got hired here, Buzz Keel, who was our executive editor, he was saying, back before we had a meteorologist, the weather story would go to the lowest person on the totem pole. If it felt like it was hot out for 5 days in a row, we're going to send somebody out, just talk to a bunch of random people. But it was the newest guy, the freshest face in there. But, now we have a meteorologist, you guys live for that stuff. And it's he was on a serious side. He said it's great because you actually are staying on top of a beat that so many people are interested in. I think more people are interested now than ever before. I mean, look, we're recording this on a Monday. How many people come to you and say, hey, what's it going to be like on Saturday or Sunday? That's 5 or 6 days away. You weren't asking those questions 30 years ago, or if you were, you weren't necessarily expecting an accurate answer. Now people are. So it's, I think it's just a sign of like where people are at with weather. And, and I think you kind of brought it up too, talking more about the weather, not just the forecast. You talk about TV, right? You might get a minute 30 or 2-minute weather hit. You can only fit so many words into that space, right? You can type, let's just say a 500-word thing, and people can read it probably also in that 1.5 to 2 minutes. So, there's advantages there. And then of course, with everything, there's pros and cons, but I think overall, getting into this space, and I think that's what you're saying, is just kind of an exciting place to be in, because we're kind of like pioneers in a way with a lot of this stuff, So, all right. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I agree. I think like we said earlier, it's kind of where things are leading. So,
yeah. So tell me more about, Kirsten, the person here. So you're in Tulsa. You say you've been all over the place, including a brief stint in New York City. So tell us where you're from and kind of where you bounced around the country, and, why did you choose Tulsa to be your home?
Sure. So I started off, I'm born and raised in Texas, went to school first at Baylor University in Waco. That's where I actually got my degree, first in communications and then a minor in journalism. And when I was there, my senior year, as you just mentioned, I actually went out to New York City, and it was a program that Baylor had. It was pretty cool. You go out there for a semester. It was your responsibility to find your own internship. And so mine ended up being at Good Morning America. So I lived with a roommate. We were all at Baylor. There was like 12 of us. I didn't live with 12 people, but there were 12 of us.
I mean, it was college. If you told me 12 people, I wouldn't have been shocked.
Yeah, no joke. And so that was my brief little stint in New York, was working for GMA, and that was back in 2006. I'm dating myself, I guess, a little bit, but yeah, that was in 2006. Then after that, I actually got my first job in Victoria, Texas, which I guarantee none of your listeners have ever heard of Victoria, Texas, and that's fine.
I think that's in South Texas. Am I correct?
It is. How'd you know that?
I look at the map. I look at the map every once in a while.
Oh yeah. Okay, you did some research. Yeah, Victoria. It's south. It's I would say the closest big city would be Corpus Christi, Houston. Okay. It's along the Gulf Coast of Texas.
Gotcha.
So very small market, and that's where a lot of people they start in small markets like that in TV to kind of get their feet wet. So I went there, but at the same time commuted back to San Antonio and finished up my meteorology degree. So I kind of laugh because sometimes, I have so many undergrad bachelor hours of school. I mean, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Communication with a minor in journalism. I have a Bachelor of Science in Meteorology, almost minored in math. But let me tell you, that's ridiculous. Math is no joke. So I kind of dropped out on that one. But anyways, enough with that. After Victoria, went out to Knoxville, Tennessee, hit up the Smoky Mountains a little bit, which of course is a very different thing to try to forecast. I loved living out there. I love being outdoors. So it was really awesome to kind of be in that area. After Knoxville, Tennessee, and again, these were all TV meteorology jobs.
Yeah.
Then I moved to Denver, Colorado, and went from the Smoky Mountains to the Rocky Mountains. And that was awesome experience. Loved that. That's actually where I ended up meeting my husband. Okay. And from there, went here to Tulsa. So I got this job opportunity. This was 6 years ago. I got a job opportunity in Tulsa. It was like a Monday through Friday thing. I had just been working weekends, and Tulsa has great severe weather. I mean, it's Tornado Alley, it's
great. It's great. I like how you say great too, because for us weather people, right, we're saying like, yeah, it's great. Yeah. But everybody else, like, what are you talking about? I'm like,
right, why would you want to live around tornadoes? Sure.
But I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
It's exciting. And as a fellow meteorologist, that if you live somewhere like Victoria was not, it was very mundane. The forecasting, because there's not too much that goes on. You'll get a rogue, kind of hurricane scare here or there, but mostly, it kind of is mundane. And so I wanted to live somewhere and be somewhere where I knew that it was going to constantly be a challenge. Forecasting is constantly going to be keeping me on my toes. And Tulsa was, it has proven to do that over the past 6 years. So that's kind of how I got here. And, my husband and I now have 2 kids, and I'm like, how did I grow up? Like, just like that. It's like, we're married, 2 kids, boom. And here we are.
Yeah.
So we're living in Tulsa, and we love it here.
I think I'll get there on the kids soon enough, and I'll feel like you one day. I'm not there yet. I'm probably getting close though. We'll see. But yeah, so like you said, you've been in Tulsa for a while, so a lot of people know you, right? Because you went to all, you've been out at the festivals, you've been out at the fairs, you're covering weather, of course. How do you look to translate that over into Tulsa World Herald and working again? You're going to be in a digital environment. No one's seeing you on television, but you want people to see you through their screen.
Sure. Well, I don't think it's unlike TV in that you want people to know where you are, what you're doing. You go out to these festivals because you want to meet people face to face. When they know you, they feel like they trust you, and they want to get their weather from you. And that's, in my TV career, that's what I've learned. And that's going to translate over into this job as well, because we're going to be there giving them the forecast every single day, but on their phone, on their tablet, through Facebook, through Twitter, through, whatever, through an app, every day. And then when severe weather hits, we're going to be there as well, helping cover that, because, severe weather, when it hits around here, again, I know I said this already, but it's some serious business. And a lot of times people will lose power during that. And so you have your TV on, you lose power, well, then that's no good for you, right? I mean, how's it gonna help? So being able to stream digitally, you can always sit in your closet or your safe space, like we call it, whenever tornado warnings come through, you can sit there and you can stream that digitally. You'd have to knock out cell towers before you could, finally get rid of us. But that's, that's the hope. And going out to these festivals and going out to be within the community, it's just to get to know people better and hopefully let them know me or get to know me so that they feel there's a connection. And I like to meet people as well. I just today I met somebody that had watched me for 5 years or so here in Tulsa, and I told her about what we were doing and how it was starting up new, and she was like, oh, well, we miss you. And I was like, well, download the app, subscribe, because you get to see me coming here pretty soon. So it's great. It's one thing I love about my job.
So it's going to be interesting though, right? Because you are building something from the ground up. You are the first meteorologist there. Of course, you have the support of everybody, myself included, but everybody, at the Tulsa World. But, have you thought much about that? I mean, it's kind of exciting, right? You're entering a new space, but, you also are building something from the ground up. It's almost like starting your own business in a way.
Yeah, it is. And it's exciting. It's a little nerve-wracking, you have high expectations for yourself, and you want the job to go smoothly, and I'm excited about all of this, though. I just think this is something where we can kind of use our creativity a little bit as well, expand on areas that maybe were limited in other capacities whenever, I was in television. This really allows for kind of this blank canvas for me, my editor, you guys, Joe, and I know people are going to meet Matt here, who's our other meteorologist. We all kind of have this blank canvas of what it is that we want to create for our markets and what it is that we want to, go, make moving forward. And so it's exciting. I mean, it's an exciting change.
Yeah, it's exciting. And, we're going to have on Matt right after you. So we got back-to-back new meteorologists coming up. I think we're going to have our new Virginia meteorologist in our December episodes. We wrap up the year. Speaking of wrap it up, Kirsten, I mean, we're almost out of time. Looking at the clock here, we got about another minute or so. So I did ask you if you could draw, well, let's say this. I asked you to draw the boundaries of North Central and South Jersey, and you took it the extra step because you actually drew New Jersey. And then you drew the boundaries. You're the first person to do so. So let's take a look.
I didn't understand. I'm sorry, to my defense, I wasn't. trying to like one up anybody. I just
Well,
didn't, I don't know if I understood.
and so you're an overachiever. How about that? You're just an
Okay.
overachiever. So okay, so I'm looking at your map now, and this is what I think. I think you would be a great person to live in like Jersey City or like Alpine or like the far northern part of the state, because this is exactly what people who live by the New York border think of New Jersey. So just to pull it up here, we have your north central divide, like basically what's known as Route 78 here in New Jersey, which is my boundary for North and Central Jersey. So we're good there. But then you have Central Jersey is like the size of my pen here. You have it only going to about like, I don't know, like Trenton to like Long Branch, and then everything south is South Jersey. And my brother-in-law, who lives, with my sister by New York border, that's what he thinks the setup is. So I think if you were to ever move to New Jersey, I think you would want to go to the northern half of the state. Have a lot of friends over there.
Good to know.
All right. So before we wrap up, let everybody know how they can, first give us a website, and then where can we follow you on the socials?
Yeah, absolutely. Website, tulsaworld.com. You go to our main page, and of course, weather's going to be slapped up there, as we were mentioning before. It's going to take a couple of weeks. We're still kind of getting things up and running. And then with social, it's Tulsa World meteorologist Kirsten Lang.
Awesome. All right. Well, Kirsten, thanks again. We'll be talking, of course, plenty here. And who knows, maybe we'll have you back on the show at some point in the future. But wanted to let everybody here who's listening or watching show everybody, what we're doing company-wide here. So it's good to have you on, Kirsten. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Something in the Air podcast, brought to you the first and third Wednesdays of every month. And this episode, we're continuing with introducing my weather siblings here as part of Lee Enterprises. And we have my weather brother over here, Matt Hollander. He is the Midwest Chief Meteorologist for Lee Enterprises. So he's going to be covering from about Northwest Indiana over to Nebraska, on up into the upper Midwest. So, Matt, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Kirsten when we had our first one, which is, why dive into this emerging little corner of the weather field?
Well, a couple things for mine, since it's kind of a very unique role in that I'm a regional meteorologist and also a digital meteorologist, and so there's a little bit of both that excites me. From a regional standpoint, it's like I'll never have a dull day. There's always going to be weather to talk about. I mean, if something's not happening in Nebraska, something's probably going to be happening in Northwest Indiana or Wisconsin or somewhere in this big region that I'm covering. So I'm never going to have a dull moment. I'm never going to get bored with the weather, which as a meteorologist, I think, sometimes you can be in one place and the weather can get quiet, maybe for a couple weeks. That's not going to be the case for me. So there's always going to be something interesting to talk about. But also, from a digital standpoint, I just see that's where the future of weather coverage is going. I mean, when I talk to my friends, other millennials and few Gen Zers, but a lot of fellow millennials.
Mostly millennials, yeah.
Yeah. When I talk to them about where they're getting their weather information from, like, where do you get your forecast from? It's like, I look at my phone and I look at a forecast on there, and like so many people say that. But then I also when I look at the forecast on the phone, I'm like, oof. You're missing out on a lot of quality information. You get the highs and the lows, and some apps are better at that than others. But as far as like details, and I think that's what we're getting more and more. Fortunately, we have the ability to get more detailed in the forecast. And the apps, yeah, they have those hour by hour forecasts, but that's where the accuracy of the apps really starts to deteriorate, and can't keep up with like the latest, it's a lot of times a blend of models going into those apps, and they don't pick up on which model might be doing the best. And so you can get so much more detail, especially on a significant weather event is approaching, when you can actually have a real meteorologist making a forecast. But if people are getting the forecast on their phone, I just want to be there to be like a good source of information on people's phones and on people's laptops. That just seems to be where the future is going. I came from a TV background, and the TV audience is still fairly significant, but it's not growing like the digital audience is. So I'm like, why not just jump in digital? Because there could very well be a day where everything's digital. There is no differentiation between TV and digital. It'll all be digital with all the streaming world that we're going into. So for me to just kind of just run into this digital world and just kind of focus on it and dive in and kind of be on the leading edge of just doing digital only forecasts, real exciting and hopefully trailblazing.
Hey, listen, I hope one day we'll be seen as the weather pioneers in this space. Maybe someone will write a book about us.
Oh, that would be, we'll write our own book, you know, we might be able to.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, we'll write our own book. We'll take matters into our own hands. So so tell me, right? Because, you know, you're covering a large area. I'm covering a small area, a subset of what you would typically consider a TV market for weather. And Kirsten's covering Tulsa. So like, how do you see, your average day going? Because, on our end, like part of, I think what our job is going to be is getting out and seeing people in these communities. But obviously, unless the Lee private jet is coming out for you, Matt, I think mostly what you're going to be doing is connecting directly through, your phone, your computer, your tablet. So, what do you think an average day is going to be like for you?
Yeah, that's still kind of all in the works and a planning process. Fortunately, we're getting the right tools in place, and thanks to technology, it's gotten so much easier. I kind of had a little previous experience working remotely for somewhere and not actually being in the place where I'm forecasting for you. I had a TV job previously where it was kind of two jobs combined into one. I was in Cincinnati at the Fox station there, but that was only half my job. The other half of my job was I was working as a meteorologist for the Fox station in Ottumwa, Iowa. But I stayed in Cincinnati the whole time, so I was making forecasts remotely for Ottumwa, Iowa, and also Kirksville, Missouri. That was the TV market.
Okay.
But fortunately, we have the technology where you can make a forecast for anywhere in the world. That's what you have access to these computer models. You don't need to be where the weather is to make that forecast. And then I was also able to do social media. I mean, you have great tools like Social News Desk for anybody who's familiar with that product. It allows you to access multiple social media accounts at once. And so instead of having to just log into each individual Facebook and Twitter account for all these different properties, newspapers that I'll be working for, I can do a post if it's relevant to multiple places. I can make one post at one time. So it can save a lot of time on my workflow. And then as far as I can't make a 7-day forecast for each of the individual cities that I'm going to be covering. So a lot of my focus is going to be kind of on the short term, what's going to be happening the next 24 hours, and then highlighting big things that I see coming, like big changes. If it's raining a lot right now, hey, when is the rain going to end? When is the dry weather going to start? Or if there's a big change in temperatures, like, it's a little bit warmer than normal right now, but watch out for the cold front coming in 4 days. We'll keep you posted on the latest details. So it's going to have to be kind of more generic in the long term, which it kind of always is. But for me, more importantly so now, because I'm covering such a large area, I can't get too specific on those things that are especially more than 3 days out. I'm just going to have to kind of broad brush and say, this is something we're watching, the potential for a big snowstorm perhaps, or maybe the potential for an extended dry stretch. Those are just going to be kind of more generic things that I'm going to have to kind of broad brush. But that I think, really being able to focus in, and you can get pretty detailed, especially with the tools that we're going to have when it looks like maybe part of my area is going to have a little bit more impacts. And obviously going to focus more on the area that might be expecting severe storms for the day, where maybe over in Northwest Indiana, things are maybe being quiet, but just kind of giving them a heads up, hey, tomorrow we have the chance for severe storms there. So it's going to be focusing on where's the most impactful weather going to be every day, and then just highlighting kind of what's the next big change that we're watching. That's probably going to be the approach I'm going to have to take. Got
it. Let's talk about Matt growing up here. And I want to say for everybody listening here, we have 4 meteorologists in league right now, right? We have how many? Maybe 10,000 meteorologists in the country. Would you believe that Matt and Kristen went to the same high school together in Texas? And now she's in Tulsa, and Matt's based in Chicago, but covering the Midwest. I mean, I didn't do a double take when you guys said that in that text thread. But go on, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just tell us a little bit about, growing up, how you got interested in weather. And then after that, we'll get to our New Jersey map as we wrap it up.
Yeah, that blew my mind when I found out that Kirsten went to Ronald Reagan High School in San Antonio, Texas. Now, we did graduate separate years, so we weren't in the same class, because I don't remember seeing you there. So there's a few years in difference in age, but yeah, same high school, grew up in the same relative area in San Antonio. I was one of those kids growing up. I think a lot of meteorologists say this. It was very interested in the weather, loved watching the Weather Channel. When there was a big thunderstorm outside, I would stand in the garage. I'd want to go out in it, but my parents made me stay at least in the garage to watch the big rains coming down. So always had this interest in weather, but I think the moment where it really clicked for me that I want to be a meteorologist, and particularly someone who communicates the weather, a broadcast meteorologist, was my sophomore year of high school, which was when Hurricane Katrina happened. And that was just a huge national story. I mean, the days leading up to it, but then it's particularly during the storm and the aftermath. And the aftermath was a story that lasted for weeks, just the complete destruction of New Orleans. And, like what went wrong? Like how could how could this situation happen? How could one event just change so many people's lives? That story just grabbed me. It's like, what could have been done differently? Where was the communication breakdown? Why didn't more people get out of the way? And so that's what really grabbed me. I started to realize in that 2005 hurricane season until 2020 came around and broke the record. That was just an epic hurricane season. And that was really also that time frame was like when there was a lot more talk about climate change and the potential of how it was going to have impacts on extreme weather in so many ways. I was like, man, this is just when it suddenly clicked. Like, I've always been interested in weather. Like, now's the time to get in and, be a part of communicating, particularly communicating the weather and trying to help people better understand for it, plan for it, keep themselves safe. So I was like, this is what I want to do. And I've never looked back since 2005. Haven't changed my mind and still doing it now.
And I'll tell you what, I say this all the time at talks. If you took 10 meteorologists and you lined them up and said, how long have you been interested in weather for? I would say 7 out of 10 have been interested since before middle school, probably. It's hard to just fall into it. It's just something about it. But I want to turn, because we got about another minute left. I want to turn to our New Jersey map. So we did Kristen's already. I said hers was really good if you lived in the far northern part of the state. That's how the northern people see the rest of the state here. So I have not clicked on your map yet. So let me see what we got here. I'm clicking on it right now. Let's see. So we got a Google map. Okay, we got it. So he's got north, central, and south here. So you are, what I would call a geographical purist here. You just pretty much just took the lines and snipped them through. So let me ask you, one, what made you draw those lines? And two, did you know that there was a north, central, south Jersey thing going on in Jersey?
Well, I'd heard
or
of the northern.
Mind?
Yeah, I'd heard of the northern and north-south Jersey before, but then I saw the Stephen Colbert thing where it's like now there's also a central Jersey, so I was like, all right, well,
there's always been a central Jersey.
So then I started like looking at, all right, so like why is it? But then I still kind of was like, I don't understand why this is so hard. Why can't you just split the state into thirds? But then you look at it, and you really look at a map, it's like that is the funkiest looking state of all time. It's such an odd shape. It's like, how do you split it? So in my mind, I guess I could have gone traditional and gone like horizontal lines, but I was like, for such a strange shape, you got to almost do something different. So I went with diagonal lines. And I thought actually what worked well, if you look at the orientation of Long Island, it is at a diagonal. So I kind of just went right to the south of Long Island, drew my first line, like due south of Long Island, because can't include Long Island. That's kind of its own separate area. But I definitely wanted to kind of keep that New York metro area as much intact as possible. But then I thought, Princeton, I never think of Princeton as a New York school, so that had to be separate. That had to be in a separate zone, but definitely not southern, so it has to be central. And I kind of figured like the central area includes Philly, and I tried to include the Philly metro area, like all the little neighborhoods, that are in New Jersey but definitely associate with Philly. But then I kind of think of southern Jersey. You look there, it's like definitely a little bit more spread out. The population's not as dense, so it's a pretty large area. But I feel like people there kind of experience the same type of thing. It's got a big, long stretch of coast, but it's not as built up as like the central coast. Like I guess kind of more your classic Jersey Shore. The southern coast is a little more spread out, and I feel like a little bit more of a rural feel. I mean, coming from the south, nothing's rural in New Jersey.
We'll see what people think about Philly being in central Jersey when we put this out and let everybody listen. But Matt, thanks so much for being with us. I appreciate, obviously, we're going to be doing so much together. I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to call you all part of our weather family here at Lee. And real quick before we wrap up, where can we find you on the socials?
Facebook and Twitter is mainly where I hang out at. So meteorologist Matt Hollander on Facebook and at Matt Hollander on Twitter. And if you're interested in Midwest weather, I'll be talking about it a lot there, and then kind of any other fun thing that I encounter in my day-to-day life.
Awesome. Well, there he is. Please give him a warm welcome. You'll probably be seeing a lot of him, I should say, as we go into next year. And we're going to wrap up this podcast. We're going to be back the first Wednesday of December, recapping the month of November here and all this coastal flooding and cold air we've had with New Jersey State climatologist, my weather dad, Dr. Dave Robinson. Until then, everybody, happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back with you soon. This is the Something in the Air podcast.